Hi everyone, I'm Alexander Zeitlin, and this is the Lockdown Lecture Series for Beginning Violin, adapted from the Alias Music Introductions course for the classroom setting. Let's jump into Lesson 6 today. So today we're kind of going on to our next piece. Last week we finished up our nursery rhymes. You guys had a chance to polish everything up. If you haven't done so lately, just go through and play through all of them with the recording at the very end of lesson 5. Try to match the sound that I use as much as possible. Today we're going to go on to the Bach Minuet. So just a couple things we're going to learn approaching a more serious classical piece. There's a whole history behind this piece that we're not going to quite get into, but it shows up in many pedagogical schools. So this is a useful piece indeed. So as you can tell, this is much longer than our nursery rhymes. And so we're going to divide it up into a few sections. So I'm going to take a moment here to mark the sections and mark the arrows. But you guys are going to write in your strings and fingers just like you have on the nursery rhymes. I will, at the end of the lesson here, mark the first ones in, and then I'll demonstrate how to practice it. But we're going to start marking our sections and labeling them by area. We're going to have like an A area where it's kind of like the first part of our piece, and we're going to have a B area. And you guys can mark these in your music. Let me switch the screen here so you can see it a little bit better. So here's the first half. The last A section finishes right here. And then we go on to the B sections right here. This is section B1, B2, B3, and B4. Now, some of you who have some musical experience may wonder, about certain things like the key signature changing. There are now less sharps in the key signature right here. Some of you might be wondering about the time signature changing. We're not going to get into that right now. We're just going to learn the notes individually one at a time. So let me mark some arrows. You guys can take a moment and mark these as well. So we have a lower arrow here. Lower, that's section A1. Here comes section A2, lower. You'll notice that as opposed to all of your songs, your A2s here, a lot of them are going to be lower instead of higher. Not all of them, but a lot of them. A2, E2 is going to be lower. So by this time, you guys should even start to be recognizing these notes even without using your chart to write them in. There's our A sections with arrows. That's supposed to be an up arrow. There we go. I'll talk about this note in just a moment. There we go. Here's our B1 section arrows. You notice here, for example, we have a sharp in the middle of the piece. Again, in this course, it's a beginner course. You're just kind of going to work through these pieces. We're not going to go over how sharps affect the music in the middle of the piece. That's something you guys can go over with your private teacher or with your teacher in the classroom. And then we have one more or two more sections. Almost there. There we go. And one more section. Oh, it's supposed to be an up arrow. Here we go. I missed one. Right here. Lower arrow and higher arrow. Okay, I think I got all of them. So pull it up into the screen so you can see the whole page. This is the whole page right here. So feel free to take a moment and copy down all those arrows. You can pause the screen if you want. Let's take a look at how we're going to tackle this piece. So the first step is going to be the same. We're not going to change anything. You're going to write in your strings and fingers. So grab your scales. I will write them in with you. We're going to take a look at this first section today. So we start with A3, D3, and then it continues up to A0, 1, 2, 3. You guys already start to notice that just as they move up, you just go up the fingering as well. D3, here's E0, A2, 3, that's E0, 1, 2, and then we have D3, and then D3. And for next class, the next video, I will put up the fingerings for all of it, but you guys should still be using this time to practice writing in your strings and fingerings. After this minuet, you guys should be done with writing in strings and fingerings. You should be so good at it, you could do it in your head. So, written in strings and fingerings. Step 1, so this is kind of how we're going to do new material. We're going to start by write in strings and fingerings. Oops. Step 2, you're going to practice with whole bows. So, practicing with whole bows, essentially, going to look like this. You guys can even you guys know how to practice with whole bows already. In a moment, you can pause, practice, and then come back to this video and then play along with me. So here's the first line. So that's your first goal, is to practice with whole bows. When you're practicing it, I suggest just going over it 3 times until you know it well and doing that for a few days. When you know it well, we will move on now to practicing with rhythm. So when you practice with rhythm, here's what we learn in our approach to learning rhythm. And you do have to know which notes are longer and shorter. You should know that a quarter note is 1 beat and an eighth note is a half a beat. A dotted half note here is 3 beats. But what we learn is that to execute rhythm, you have to be mindful of bow distribution. If you have a 1 beat note and you use a tiny bit of bow, you're going to be done with that note too soon. If you have a long note, like 3 beats, and you give the bow really quickly, you will be out of bow and you won't be able to hold it long enough. So we're just going to use a simple formula to get you guys ready to play with rhythm. And that's basically, if you have a quarter note, I'm going to draw this up here. I think there's room up here. I'll do it right here. So we use a quarter note, 1 beat, we'll use the whole bow. If it's an eighth note, it's a half a beat, use a half bow. But I'm actually going to call them long bows and short bows, okay? And then short bow. Okay, drag this out to where we can see it all. Long bow and short bow. All right. I just want you guys to generally keep in mind, long bow means basically the whole bow. Short bow means less than half the bow. So I want you guys to make sure that you're kind of familiar with that concept. You'll notice that there's only 1 whole bow, but there are 2 half of the bows. There is an upper half and a lower half. So if I have half bows, I might be doing half bows here in the lower half or in the upper half. So let me write out an exercise for you guys just to get warmed up on your bow distribution. So it's going to look like this. I'll write out a quarter. And then 4 eighth notes. 1/4, and then 4/8 notes. So 1 beat, 4 half beats. 1 beat, 4 half beats. So here's what it would look like. You guys follow along with what I just wrote out on top. I have whole bow, long bow, and then short, 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 whole bow, short, 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 short. You notice it's half a beat and I said half a bow, but I want you guys to exaggerate actually, do a little bit less than half a bow for a short note, and absolutely the whole bow for a long note. So here it is without any narration, with rhythm. So try to do that along with the recording you just had. You could pause and rewind it later. But just as a practice, and this should be your rhythm warm-up. We're going to call this our rhythm warm-up. You should do this at the beginning of the Bach minuet. So after you've learned your first line with only the notes, you can now add the rhythm. And the great thing about this piece, without any additional bowings, is that it will always work out. You'll never have to use like a whole bow and run out of bow at the tip. So I will play the first line now with the correct rhythm, and then you guys can follow along with me. So after you practiced it, it should sound like this. So just a couple notes for the first half. Your homework is to learn all of the A sections. I know I wrote markings for the B sections. You can go on a little bit, you know, if you get ahead this week. If you have a note like this is a very long note, you just be extra slow. Hold it extra slow for like the length of 3 bows. Just go through the bow slowly. So that's one note. Actually, that's about it. That's the only thing you have to watch out for. So in the next lesson, we're going to cover how to practice sections that are new and focus in on them while taking sections that you know well and just review them so that you spend less time on reviewing things and more of your energy on new things. That's it for the lesson. I will see you guys next time.